Some of you may have seen this, but the good news is we don't have to worry about this just yet. I know, for those of you that know me, my background is middle school, and so I've had a really hard time wrapping my head around some of the CDC recommendations and other agencies recommending, but I just thought this was kind of exactly what we would think would potentially be happening, and probably even some stuff that's even worse than this with kids having to mask up and social distancing and all of that. So the good news is at this point, we don't have to deal with that. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. First of all, I'm going to reiterate again, anything that we say today, there's no, it may change tomorrow. I don't know any other way to say that. So we're going to show some things. We're going to work with some tools and some apps and give you some information to the best of our ability that we think is on the right track and ready to go. And so in just a moment, Michelle's going to talk to you about district materials for NTI 2.0, because here's the reality, folks. The best way we can do this is we continue to teach what we've already been teaching, and to try to teach it to the best of our ability the way we've been teaching it. But the one reality is the hands-on piece is going to be the piece that's going to be lacking, right? Because the kids aren't there, we can't get the materials to them, and so those will be the kinds of pieces and things that we'll have to look at doing something different. We're going to talk a little bit about norms in just a second. We will talk about synchronous and asynchronous and make sure we have a definition of that, and so that we know exactly how we want to move forward. We'll have some examples of what a virtual classroom and a schedule will look like that you could potentially use. We will look at online tools, and then we will look at resources. And once again, you'll have several opportunities to talk to your colleagues about some of these things and maybe some of the things that they're doing. Because some of your schools may be jumping out there and maybe ahead of a gun and may already be planning how you're going to do school, so to speak, and may already be talking about what those schedules look like. I know the last information I heard from Bootleg Principals meeting, there were a lot more questions and there were answers to that information. Okay. Somebody asked a question about sharing the recording. We will make sure that you have access to the recording. We're recording today because the AIS schools will also be using this next week in some of their trainings, and then we will figure out a way to share it with you as well. Probably it will be in the Google Classroom, and so teacher leaders or department chairs should be able to have access to that. So here's what you need to know about module materials. You will still have your module materials, and you will have access to, bring those home. Notebooks are being delivered, and then critters are going to be delayed to the spring. So what I want to do is that's kind of general information. So I'm going to mute for a second, and I'm going to allow Michelle to share a little more information for you.
Hey, Charlotte, while I'm doing that, take a look in the chat. Kyle is having some issues with accessing, and it's something he's getting a response I've not seen before.
Kyle, you probably will not be able to access because I think you're brand new and you don't have JCPS credentials, but I will try to get stuff to you after.
Okay, so lots of questions in particular about those of you who have gone to the FOSS webinar. We're doing a bit more research on that because we've had a lot more teachers respond than we originally thought would. And one of those is we've asked FOSS to rearrange the way that they're going to release some of the information. Lacey, Charlotte, and I have discussed it at length, and we are not rearranging the modules on our end. We have the instructional order is very intentional, and we're going to be keeping that as is for now. As far as modules, okay, sorry, I thought somebody was talking. They will be delivered to your schools by the 10th of August, and along with the notebooks. Our understanding is that schools and the district principals in the districts are working on when teachers will be in and be able to actually get whatever it is that they need to take home. There's also your principals and teacher leads. Those of you teacher leads that are on here have received an email from us this morning that include a module sign out sheet for the school, as well as what teachers need to do if they have materials that are missing from their module. My guys have not been there all summer. They've been there a couple of days a week, a couple hours. Today is actually their first full-time day. So it's been somewhat of a struggle to get all of our modules for our first rotation finished, but they are finished, they are completed. So there's some more detail that will be coming to you if you're a classroom teacher through your science lead and or your principals. Critters, that only affects 7th grade. Right now, it looks like the majority of the critters for 7th grade for structure and function and pop and eco could be affected. We know for sure structures and functions are. So we're going to defer those to a later date so that kids still get the opportunity to interact and look at the paramecium and the other things that they're looking at, and the adults. So that's really kind of all we have right now, and like Charlotte said, it is subject to change. The reason the email went out to principals this morning was just because they are anxious, as everyone else, to see what kinds of materials will have access, that teachers will have access to. We did not allow modules to go home during our first round of NTI, so this is going to be a new adventure on our end as well. So we just ask for patience going forth.
All right, so Michelle, just a couple of quick questions. One is modules that are already in the classroom from last year. You want to address that just really quickly?
Sure. So principals and department chairs were told in May that the modules from last year will be picked up once school begins. So for us, and what I'm planning along with the supply service drivers is that we'll be picking up all of those modules that are still sitting around the last week of August. So principals were actually asked, because we know DCs weren't allowed in the buildings for different amounts of time. They may or may not have had the ability to go and pick those modules up out of classrooms. So we kind of asked principals to spearhead that and ask their plant operators to assist. So hopefully all of the modules within your buildings are in some generalized area that we will be able to go pick up. Now, one of the issues we have had is because our last end of the year pickup picks up all of those modules that maybe you kind of held on to throughout the year. And I think we were 14 modules short on biodiversity and 15 modules short on pop and eco because they're still sitting in schools. So that's something that we will work through on our end with whoever is in the building when we go to do those pickups.
Okay, so we seem to have quite a few questions about notebooks, so let me go ahead and address that really quickly. First of all, if your school didn't order notebooks, it's no different than any other time when schools don't order notebooks. You would do what you would normally do with that. Schools will decide how notebooks will go out. So according to the district recommendations, there will be packets that will be going home to students. And so schools will be determining what's in those packets. My suggestion to you would be to include your notebooks in there, because I'm not sure we really want to go where everything 100% is digital. Now, you guys know I'm probably a little older than some of you. I would want my students doing some stuff digitally, but I would also want them still writing, interacting in their notebooks, if that's at all possible. So, that will be a call that you guys will make in your departments with your department chairs. Folks are asking about, can we, change the format of the notebooks? That's definitely a possibility. When I talked to Lacey about that, remember, we're in the same boat kind of as you guys. We've been waiting, like, I didn't want to do this PD until we had more answers. Well, We don't have more answers, but we have some. So are there other formats that we might be able to put the notebooks in? Yes. We just we'll have to figure out how we can, use our time. Once again, it's usually Lacey and myself that does that. Michelle tries to pitch in when she can, when she's not overloaded with stuff at the warehouse. But there would be a little bit of work involved in doing that. Not saying we won't do that, and I can't promise you at this point that we will, but that is definitely something that we could think about and have for discussion to do. So hopefully we'll show you a few ways today that you can, whether it's snip and paste some of the things from your notebooks onto your slides, into your classroom, whatever, so that you can use some of those. So really quickly.
Charlotte, real quick.
Yeah.
One more thing before we move on. Safety of science materials and these things going home. It is our understanding that there is a 3-day surface time frame for infection. So we have made sure that anything that goes out to the schools has sat for at least, or been boxed up for at least 3 days. I wanted to make sure that you all knew that in case your teachers or anyone else in your building ask.
Yeah, and then somebody also asked about critters. So at this point, we have not changed the order of the modules or any of that, because we really don't know what the spring is going to bring as well. And so critters, when you might normally use them, for those of you teaching 7th grade life science, this is where you're going to be wanting to look at using some videos and some other things in that place. If we get to a point that in the spring, I went brain dead there for a second. If we get to a point in the spring that we're back to face-to-face, we would have the critters delivered at that point, and then you would just have an opportunity to kind of put them in there. Yes, they would be out of context, but hopefully it would be almost a good review for students to go back and be able to do some of those things at that point.
Brittany just asked if it is an expectation to take the modules home or a preference, and we are just offering it as an option.
Yeah. So what I would say to that once again is this is difficult enough transitioning to all online with our students. It's difficult for you guys. It may be more difficult for some of us. I'll speak for myself, learning a ton of technology like really quickly. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to change things, make things totally different, and then put that on top of it. I truly think in the time that I've spent this summer just like looking at both elementary and middle school units, there's a lot you can take from what you already do, and you just have to figure out how to supplement some of the things that you can no longer do because you're in a virtual setting. Okay, all right, so we're going to move along. So what we're going to try to do here is, what I want to try to do is model some things and provide you with a ton of resources and tools that you might be able to use, or you might be able to use with your students, other teachers, and so forth. So, sorry, I had somebody else trying to get in the waiting room, or get out of the waiting room. Sorry about that. And so, once again, I know a lot of you guys probably don't use Zoom. You guys maybe use Google Meet, but the features are kind of the same. So when we're doing today, eventually we want it to be not just Michelle and I that are talking. We want you to be able to come on and chat, whether you do it by typing in or unmuting yourself and sharing in the participation. So you can also share your screen if you have something that you would like to share for the greater good of the group. We will do breakout rooms. Once again, you can do breakout rooms with both Zoom and Google Meet, and so we'll try to model that today. And then you guys have probably potentially learned this the hard way with working with your classes. You need to make sure that your kids are muted, and if they don't mute themselves, you should know that you can go up and mute all other folks so that you can have a good discussion without everybody going all at the same time. So let's look at expectations. Some of you may have seen these. As with most things, I have a tendency to kind of cheat a little bit. And so I want to show you really quickly, and you can click onto these on your own, but I absolutely love these. So these are some Zoom expectations that you might want to build into your slides or presentations that you're doing with your kiddos to kind of help prepare them for what needs to happen during these Zoom sessions. Remember, last year when you were doing this, you were doing NTI with a group of kids you'd already had in the classroom. And so you probably had already trained them on your routines and expectations and so forth. And so you're going to have to look for ways to work on those routines and expectations. So there's just a couple of examples of these. That's one for Zoom. And then once again, I know that you guys use Google Meet. And so here's one that you could use for Google Meet that looks pretty much identical to the last one, just with Google Meet. So I thought those were something that might be nice for you to be able to use in your presentations. So the way we've kind of set up this session, obviously we're using Zoom as our virtual workshop. And then I've also provided you with an agenda that has the links embedded in. I apologize, it is a 2-page agenda, but that's because there are a lot of links that we wanted to share with you that you can get some information from that will help. And what we will try to do is pace this so that when you get times to work either individually or in small groups in breakout rooms, we try to provide enough resources that you can kind of go at your own pace. So you will, click on the links that you want to know more information about that will help you in planning your instruction. The ones that you're already familiar with and you don't need information on, you can kind of leave those and share them with somebody else. So once again, this is learning by doing. So that's the reason why we've kind of set the format up the way that it is, so that you have the links right there in front of you, you have the slides in front of you, so that you can interact with that. And it's a good way to do that with your students as well. Also remember, it's social. Right now I'm not modeling that very well because I don't have you guys participating or talking just yet, but that's coming. And then we want you to be engaged in the content, resources, and digital tools. Now I'm going to say this up front, and hopefully I don't have 75 of you click off right now. I know that some of you probably wanted us to take a unit, or actually all of your units, one for 6th grade, one for 7th grade, and one for 8th grade, and transpose them into a digital format. Well, first of all, we didn't have enough questions answered to be able to do that. And second of all, you guys know the content, with the exception of maybe a couple of you who have, changed grade levels or who are brand new. We can work with those folks individually or hook them up with folks, but you guys know your content. A lot of you already have a structure because you've been teaching the same thing for several years. You probably already have your slides. You're just looking for some additional apps and tools and so forth to kind of supplement in the places that you can't do it like you normally did. So like I said, no, you're not going to get something that's totally, transformed and here's your ready to go package that you're going to be able to start. You're going to get a lot of different things that you can use and personalize them to use in your classroom. Somebody's asking about, are you going to be able to use Zoom for NTI 2.0? Not that I'm aware of. We have Zoom because the science office has, purchased a Zoom license or whatever it's called. And so that's the reason why we've just kind of gotten used to using that. So if that's a problem for folks in the future, we can use Google Meets. I'm not sure Google Meet allows as many participants as a Zoom does.
That's it, Charlotte. I think we use Zoom because Google Meet, we can't have 100 people.
Yeah. So anyway, oops, move my slides. So let's go ahead and get you guys talking a little bit. So whether you want to go into the chat, or I would love for a couple of you to unmute and introduce yourselves and kind of talk to us about, so what are you hoping to get out of the session today? And I have really good wait time.
Hey, I'll go first.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate that.
Well, seeing that I've been teaching for, just a few years,
Yep.
I was hoping you would have this whole thing all packaged up for us.
I know you were, Leslie. I know how you're thinking. And let's just be real. Once again, it's me, Lacey, and Michelle, and it's K-12. That's one reason why we don't. And then the other reason is, like I said, as far as exactly the format of if the district's going to give a specific format, we're not sure of what that is yet. Hopefully we will know sometime this week. But I have a feeling a lot of that will be left up to your individual schools, and we'll share what I mean by that in just a moment. Literally really talking about your schedule. But thank you, Leslie. Somebody else?
Well, and there's a million new things to use out there.
Yep. Start small. Don't go crazy. Lauren, you got something for us?
Yeah, I was just thinking like how the engagement piece, there's a lot of platforms, you've got, there's a bunch of platforms, but how do you get them, we can't rely on students to have rulers or, measuring sticks at home. So how do we get them for that engagement piece to be hands-on? Because that's almost impossible. So what kinds of things can we do to get them involved?
Yep. So that's a great one. Hopefully we'll have a few things on that, but I think that'll be something that we'll be looking at and researching all year long. One of the things that Michelle and I did last year with the elementary group that we'll do with the middle school group as well is we probably will set up a separate Google Classroom just for teachers to be able to share things that they're trying, things that they're using, so that folks will have a larger bank, so to speak, to kind of pull from. Somebody else?
That's kind of what I was hoping, Charlotte. I'm Susan from No Middle. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Susan.
Just that we can share and have a place to put things that we find very successful and things that our kids do really well with. That was so helpful last year when people got together and talked about the things that worked. Yeah,
I think that's going to be critical, and I'm going to say this a couple of times throughout this presentation. Start small, do what you know how to do well, and then begin to add things on. You don't have to go crazy with this. There doesn't have to be 1,000 bells and whistles in order to do online learning. It doesn't have to be like that. Jessica, I see that you asked a question about assessment. I don't know how to answer that at this point. So we haven't been given any guidance on assessment. I know that the one assessment that we always use doesn't include science. So that that assessment will continue to do that. I think it's going to be more formative assessment. If you haven't looked at the curriculum maps, Lacey has done a nice job, at least with I believe it's all the first units, K through 12. She's added some additional assessments on there, assessment links that are linked to the standards that you're teaching that you might find useful in helping with the assessments. All right, I'm going to skip questions and let Michelle kind of go with that. Anybody else? Something they want to get out of today's session? And Jessica, I'll see if we have any more information on assessments.
Charlotte, are our maps live yet?
They should be, unless we're having an issue.
Okay.
Okay. And like I said, they've been updated for the first units with the new assessment materials. I do not think Lacey has them done for the second or third, or some of the second units might be done, but I'm positive the third units are not done. All right, so let's kind of dive in. So I thought this quote was great. The upcoming school year might be one of the toughest ever to be an educator. I would agree with that. We probably are already feeling that. but I also think it could be something great. So think about mindset. I know we're scared, nervous, whatever. Our kids are probably the same, our parents are the same, but I think we, as teachers, if nothing else, we know how to try something new and grab it by the horns and make the best of it. So the first document I want to have you guys take a look at, hopefully you've seen this. Have you guys seen the ONWARD Together document? If not, you get to see it for the first time. So this is the district produced document about NTI 2.0, as we seem to be calling it. So I'm not going to bore you with like going through all of this, but what I did want to do was take us to page 10, I think it is. No, 6 through 8. Hold on. Here we go. So the start of the school year, and I apologize, I know I'm making some of you dizzy. Let me see if I can get there. What we're looking at are, meltdown, Charlotte. There we go. So here is what the district is recommending. Okay, so I'm pointing this out to you because this is a document that we have at this point. It doesn't particularly give us a ton of information. So we're going to create something that's more equitable, more robust. We're going to provide opportunity for daily instruction and interaction between students and teachers. We're going to ensure the digital tools and resources are used, blah, 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 blah. So this is the document that principals have so far. Then you have a section over here to support students. Schools will do the following. So you can see they're trying to give every kid a device, internet access. They're doing something with email addresses. You see this hard copy piece, daily communication. And I'm pausing for just a second for you to just kind of be able to see this. Anybody have a thought about this? All right, no thought about this. So I wanted you to have that in case you haven't seen it, so that you will see the document that right now folks are looking at to try to plan. So let's move on. So we need to make sure that we're familiar with this whole thing of synchronous versus asynchronous. So synchronous would be, loosely stated, kind of what we're doing now. We're all meeting together, we're all in one place. We had a predetermined time and we're using some kind of video conferencing, right? So then asynchronous would be those times when students are working independently and at their own pace. There probably are deadlines of when something needs to be submitted or done, and then there's the use of a variety of different types of tools, right? So we need to make sure we understand these words because these are the words that are being thrown out. You know how in education we have lots of acronyms and lots of big words. Well, these are the two big terms that are going out. So whatever schedule your school comes up with, it should have a combination of these two things. And there's different ways different folks think about it, right? I would say to you that probably starting out, especially, probably more of your time will be asynchronous. And let's see a little bit about what that might mean. So let's look really quickly. And this was taken from some PD that Lacey and I did over the summer from a place called Better Lesson. And when we were in this PD, they had some really good information on looking at synchronous versus asynchronous, but they really wanted to point out two additional things. It's not just about these two pieces, right? Because those are where you're going to get the meat of your content. It's also about, like what Jessica had questions about, that whole assessment piece, but also how are we giving students feedback? And then finally, we have got to figure out a way to develop culture and relationship in an online format. Think of your kids that are at school because of that whole social aspect, right? And so trying to think about how to make sure that we work on this piece, because if we don't, that's where we're going to lose our kids, right? So here's what I'd like you to do. Some of you are probably familiar with the Jamboard. If you click either in the agenda or you click on this slide, you should be able to go to the Jamboard. And I have those four things here. So I've taken those 4 boxes out there and I've turned them into a question. So what I'd like to know is, how did you do synchronous lessons during spring NTI? Then there's a question on how do you do asynchronous lessons? What kinds of things did you do to provide feedback and assessment? And then what did you do around developing and relationships and building culture? So I'm going to give you just a couple of moments and have you add some sticky notes to that. If you're not familiar with the Jamboard, once you go into it, you're going to click on the little sticky note here, and then you should be able to respond to the question. You can change the color of the sticky note if you like, and then as soon as you type something in, you can save it. So I'm going to give you a couple of moments. You don't all have to be on the same screen at the same time. There are 4 different screens you can click on.
Charlotte, I had opened my own Jamboard and I didn't see you show how to do the sticky notes. Will you do that again?
Sure. If you go over to the left, here's where your tools are at. If you click on the sticky note right there, and then you should just be able to type on it, and then you save it. And I'll do one.
Charlotte, they don't seem to have access to the Jamboard. It's a view only for most of them.
Oh, well, that's not good. Hold on, let me see if I can change that for you. So what I said about old people and technology. All right, sorry about that, folks. Let me copy that into, all right. If you look in the chat, you should now have a link that allows you, oh, sorry. Wait, I gotta do another link, sorry. All right, there you go, try that link, the second one. I apologize.
I don't know if it's just me, but I don't see the link.
So right here. Oh, wait.
Yeah, there's no link on our screen.
Okay, hang on. Give me just a second. There you go. Thanks, Michelle.
Sorry, another way to get there is through the agenda. I don't know if you said that already. Just click on Jamboard and it takes you directly to it.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll take another minute or so. Just wanted to give you a feel of a Jamboard, which is a nice tool that you can use with your students. It's pretty easy to do and set up. Yeah, Lauren, that could be true. We've got a lot of people on, so we may have. If you click on another slide, you might be able to get in there. One of the things with technology, when you have almost 80 people, sometimes it won't let everybody in. Oh, look, somebody figured out how to write on the screen. You can do that. It's fun. If you want to play with the tools, be my guest. Yeah, I like that. It's a good idea if you do a Google Meet or a Zoom to record, so that any kiddos that miss can then go back. You can upload that to your classroom and let kids then do it at their own time, or as the technology department likes to call it, the power of pause. All right, so we're going to move back. So once again, what I wanted to do is two things here. I wanted to talk about these 4 pieces because I think they're very important as we go forth and think about what we're doing with our kiddos. And then I also wanted to embed in the Jamboard so that if you haven't done one before, you've got at least a little bit of a feel for that. So let's kind of move on. So this is the kind of thing that I know you're interested about. So what is this thing going to look like? When I say thing, what kind of a schedule will you have with your kiddos? Once again, I'm going to say this again. Everything that you see on here regarding schedules are just examples that we found, and it's not what's recommended or said by the district. At this point, as far as the district has not said if they're going to set up what your daily schedule is going to look like. Once again, we think, Michelle, Lacey, and I, that schools are going to have some decisions on that based on that first document that I showed you. But here's one way to kind of look at what this might look like, right? So thinking about back to the slide before here, you kind of have those pieces over here. And these are some things that you might be doing, okay? This one is a work in progress, and eventually what Lacey would like to do with this is have some live links on there about how you might go about doing that. So let's dig in a little bit further and let's talk about another schedule. So this is what we call a hybrid schedule. And so you'll see Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're designated as synchronous. It could be, you could switch those. You might want more days to be asynchronous and less synchronous. But this is to give you an idea of what that could look like. So let's throw an example out. Lauren, I think you're still 6th grade science, right? Okay. So Lauren might have, let's say, 5 classes, right? During a normal face-to-face, 4 classes, okay. So what she would do is you would have your class periods here, right? And then she would have her time that she was going on with each of those classes. The kids that are assigned would know to show up at that time. And then let's say the online class might be 45 minutes. 45 minutes might be stretching it a little bit. It might need to be closer to 35, right? But then everybody gets a break in between. So teacher gets a 15-minute break, kids get a 15-minute break, whatever, in between before she moves on to her next class. And then Lauren would probably be repeating those science classes like you would during a normal day. The difference would be they would be virtually, right? The other difference would be the hands-on might be an issue. So there may be more video, those kinds of things going on. Then let's say Tuesdays and Thursdays are the asynchronous days, right? So here, what we might do is this is where students might get projects, a daily assignment, an assignment that lasts for a couple of days. So students would work on the assignments independently. And generally speaking, during the asynchronous days, and I'll break this down even one step further, what might be happening is, so the teacher is not on live, right? But what you might be doing is in your classroom viewing and watching what students are doing. You might be offering office hours during that time so that kids that have questions on whatever the assignment is, that they can come back and ask questions, right? You may have small group. This may be the time where you pull a small group in because you assessed them the day before, they didn't seem to get it, and so now you're going to do some direct instruction with like a small group. It also gives time to do feedback, and we'll use a tool, hopefully some of you have already are using it, like something like Google Draw, where you can give kids, feedback on their assignments and what they're doing. So like I said, I'm going to break it down one more. So this might be a way to break down the asynchronous schedule. And I'll pop back for just a second. So synchronous, we would know that would be more similar to like our normal day, right? Except for virtually. So we'd be on live, sharing, teaching, whatever. And then our asynchronous day could look something like this. Now, don't get bogged down in the times. And like I said, none of this is exact, but you may come on in the morning, have a designated time where you post your assignment. It may not be that you do it every single day, because it may be a project that's going to take, they may have the week to do it. So then you're going to monitor the classroom. You might communicate with certain students based on how they're doing. Everybody gets a lunch break. Can you imagine this, guys? You might have an hour for lunch. Then you have more time monitoring, communicating, and preparing for the next day's lesson. This could also be PLC time, like you could be meeting with your PLCs. I would imagine most schools will have designated PLC times. Then you might look at assessing progress, individual feedback, looking at for kids that are not submitting work and figuring out what you're going to do to try to pull them in. And then I would guess that a number of you felt like you were never offline in the spring. You got to make sure you give yourself some offline time. Yes, you need to be flexible, but at the same time, you got to have a life and you've got to be able to take care of what you need to take care of. So I'm going to pause for just a second because there may be some more questions that I need to look at. Feel free to.
There's a lot going on, a lot of questions about the expectations of what NTI looks like. And I'm kind of referring them back to that Onward Together manual and that NTI 2.0. The biggest question was, so do we really think that they're going to be required, at least have some synchronous requirements? And that NTI document kind of gives you a hint as to the answers to all of that. It looks like it's going to be a lot more robust than what we did at the end of the year.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think like even I saw 5 o'clock and I was kind of like, whoa, even though I'm at school till late. But I think what people have to realize too is not only between 9 and 11, because you might not have that many students get on. Hopefully you do. But like while you're monitoring and communicating, you could be grading. So I hope people don't see that 5 o'clock and they're like, oh, I'm not doing that. Because truly you can be doing that during those times when you're supposed to be communicating with kids who aren't communicating with you. Yeah.
And I see some of the questions that are popping up now, and let me just say this again. A lot of those big district questions, we do not have the answer for. And so what I will tell you is, as things get updated and changed, if we need to do something else, come back together, we're happy to do that. Right now, what we're trying to do is give you some tools so that you can begin planning some things. And then also when you're brought into the conversation with your schools, you may have some ideas about how you think this should go. Because I really do think, I feel very strongly that you guys are going to get like, kind of like the CDC guidelines, right? I think there's going to be some guidelines from the district, but then I think schools are going to determine what that schedule looks like, right? And so hopefully some of these things, the Onward Together document that Michelle's talking about, remember it's linked in the agenda. And so let me pull the agenda up real quick so you guys can see it again for some of you that maybe came on later. So you'll see that that document is right here, the Onward Together. And so you can click on that and you can kind of see what the district is saying at this point. Okay. Somebody asked about time for kids to access stuff from the food sites. I don't know about that. That would be, once again, a district thing, and we'll just kind of have to wait and see how that kind of pans out. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move on. I have one more document that I want to share with you really quickly. and then we're going to move into some tools. So if you're thinking about, what might a lesson look like, I thought this was a nice tool to break some things down for you, where you break it down between direct instruction, what the objective with that would be, and then some online tools that you might use. Now, one thing I would suggest that you be careful of, most of the online tools that were free in the spring no longer be. There are some, like Screencastify, to do recordings. A lot of us were using that, and that's fine. You can still get and do some small recordings with that Screencastify. But if it's more than 5 minutes, then you're going to upgrade and you're going to pay. So be really careful with that. Some of the resources that we recommended during the spring NTI, like I said, are no longer free. So just make sure you kind of pay attention. So these are some documents, or this is a document that you could use to kind of tell you how to look at a potential lesson. All right, going back. So what I want to do now is I'm going to put you guys into some breakout rooms, or we're going to attempt to do that. I have a little video up here if you're not familiar with breakout rooms and how to do breakout rooms, that you can watch that video to kind of show you. You can also do breakout rooms with Google Meet, so don't feel like this is just a Zoom thing. If you have your agenda up, when I invite you to a room here in just a moment, you can click on these questions in your agenda. But I want to give you about 10 minutes to just have a chat with the folks that are with you. I'm not going to be overly structured with this, other than to say that we're going to ask you to share out a little bit when you come out. But what I really want you to be able to do is talk to each other about your experiences. What are you thinking your day needs to look like? What is your week going to look like? Just really kind of diving into some of those questions. Does anybody have a question for me before I try to put you into breakout rooms? It's so weird doing this because there's so much less interaction than in a normal PD situation that it's kind of weird. So anyway, I'm going to just randomly put you into some rooms. We're going to have you there for about 10 minutes, and I'll bring you back after that time, okay? Anybody care to share some thoughts or some ideas of anything that was shared during your little breakout session?
I'll go ahead. Our biggest question, honestly, was the fact that we can't really answer these questions because we were really looking to the district for guidance on them.
Yep.
Like, what pace of learning will we expect of the students? I don't know these students. I've never had these students in my classroom before. Yep. I don't have the same relationship as I did with my kids at the end of last year. So I don't know how much time they're going to need. I don't know, if they even really know each other, because asking them to collaborate with each other over a digital platform when they haven't experienced that yet necessarily, I think a lot of us were coming here specifically today to figure out, okay, what is the average day supposed to look like? What are we supposed to be doing in these classrooms? Because science is one of those hard subjects where if the kids can't do it hands-on like they're supposed to be able to, then they're missing a lot of the real engagement and learning that's supposed to come with it.
And I agree with you 100%. And we had hoped that from our perspective we would have more answers and be able to share those, but at this point we don't. The one thing that I will tell you, though, I don't know that would have me stop planning at this point. I would be planning and putting together my how you think you're going to do it, at least for the first few weeks, because based on some of the highlights of what you just said, you're going to want to have some of those pieces that will help with building the culture in the classroom. And we have some tools here in just a moment that we'll share with you that might help with some of that. I get your frustrations. I'm right there with you. And, you know, if we get answers, we will try to share them with you as soon as we possibly can. Okay, so let's keep moving a little bit. I wanted you to just have some opportunities to kind of talk a little bit and share with some other folks that have some, you know, same concerns and information that we're all kind of in this together. Yep.
We work together at PLC a lot.
Yes.
We did all our, you know, we did most of our planning. We kind of shared, you know, lessons together. So if that helps, I mean, working with you know, other people in your building, your same grade level, same subject helps.
I mean, I would, like I said, a number of you have been teaching this for a while, so you're going to use the materials. I know you have things probably already committed to Google Slides and so forth. You know, you're going to start with those, and then you're slowly going to add to it what you can. It's really hard to get super frustrated because we don't have answers, but we just don't at this point. It wouldn't stop me from moving forward, though. So this may not be very funny now, based on the frustrations that some of you had, but literally we continue to check our email so that we will hopefully have some more answers really quickly. The good news is we have 11 days before school actually starts in this digital platform. And you hopefully will have lots of PLC time to work with other folks to plan and get yourself started. So I just wanted to share with you my new puppy. I've had her for 1 week now, and I've reverted to wearing long pants and most days long sleeve shirts because she thinks I'm a chew toy. But I do love her. She's a sweetie. All right, so let's talk about resources. I put this slide back in here again, even though you've seen it. You have the resources that you've always had. We will be working with, talking with principals to see when you guys will be able to access your modules. Michelle sent out information about when notebooks will be delivered, and then schools can make them part of their packet. The information in that ONWARD Together document talks about kids will receive an opening packet, and so you guys just want to make sure you suggest to your principals that if you have notebooks, that's part of what gets sent. So let's dive in a little bit and think about some things. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but what I would say to you is don't think we need to go all digital. If it were me, and like I said, I'm old, this is my 29th year, I'm getting ready to go into my 30th year with JCPS, I still would want the kids having some interaction where they are putting things on paper. Not everything needs to be done in front of the computer screen. So if you have those old school notebooks, send them home and let the kids do some of the work in those notebooks, okay? If you don't have notebooks, what are some things that you can do? So you can snip the notebooks because you guys all have access to the notebook pages. We can look at, and I mentioned this before, we'll continue to look at different ways to get those notebooks to you. We're happy to look at that. Honestly, once again, we didn't know. We kind of thought we might start out face-to-face and didn't really know exactly how we were going to go because you've got a number of school districts that are going with face-to-face. And so we just really didn't have an opportunity to put those together. Lacey just came back to work last week, and I'm not really back to work. So if we decide, or you guys decide that's something we need, then we'll definitely look at doing that. So let's move on. Textbooks. So any text materials that we have that are already embedded in the unit, those should be easy to share on Google Classroom, right? You can put those in. You can do them as part of an assignment for kiddos to do that. Michelle, I may have her pop back on for just a second as far as e-textbooks. If you have any textbooks that that still relate to FOSS materials, in some cases we do. Not all the units in middle school are district created, but some of them still rely on some of the FOSS materials. You would have access to those e-textbooks that once again you can assign and have your students use. So Michelle, are you still with us?
Charlotte, I had a question.
Sorry.
Charlotte, I had a question real quick.
Yeah.
Do we know if NSTA is going to be offering those electronic textbooks again like they did in the spring?
Sure, Corey, but they want to charge you. So we will have some access, some links to some other things that are free that are embedded here in just the next couple of slides that we're going to kind of move to here in just a minute.
So Charlotte, the only thing I really need to have to say with FOSS and their ebooks and the student books, the ones that we have purchased, so the new ones that we've got a few years ago, I believe we already have access to those as JCPS because we purchased those. There are some, and I think the codes are in the beginning of your teacher guides, if I'm remembering correctly. We had access at the end of last year to a whole bunch of other things that FOSS had put out. I don't know if we will go ask that they can open up everything that we don't use. What I can do is go back in some of those like first edition that maybe they don't offer the ebook any longer, but we still have like 6th grade Forces of Motion. We don't have the next gen or the 2nd generation. I can go back in and ask them to go on and open those up. So I have a request into FOSS to do quite a few things right now to see what they're willing to do for us without us having to pay, since we are such good customers and we spend such an absorbent amount of money with them. So I've got an email to them, and as soon as I know for sure what materials they're willing to open up for us, that they aren't going to charge us extra, I will let everyone know.
Okay, so what I want to do, if you haven't, you might want to mute yourselves again, since we're all back together. What I want to do is provide some time for you to look at some of the links. So you'll see in the presentation itself, there are all kinds of live links to how to do a screenshot, using Google Draw for an annotation tool. So I'm going to skip to these next 2 slides because I want to give you at least 10 minutes to kind of look at some of the things that we have here. So just really quickly, there are 1, 2, 3 slides. I'm going to kind of make you dizzy and go back and forth. So there's some links here. There are a ton of links here, and then there are links here. And so what I've done is I've gone back to the slide where it kind of broke down the 4 different things that we needed to look at. And so we wanted to provide you with some apps that you could use. Okay, so some of these are videos to let you know what some of these things are. There also are some curriculum things. So folks are asking about some of the free things that are out there. Obviously, we have some access to FOSS. Many of you are familiar with the PhET simulations, but there are more that we don't have included in our curriculum documents that might work. These open SciEd simulations are awesome. If you haven't been there yet, that might be a link that you want to click onto that have some simulations that you might be able to use with your students as well. And then the other slide that I'll point you out to, and then I'll give you some time, is basically this has some information on how to build culture in your classroom, and we've tried to look at ways of doing that online, although some of the things that you would do normally in the classroom you could do as well. And then we also have some strategies and some different things for building relationships. The one I would recommend that you want to take a look at, if you have a few moments, is this best practice online pedagogy. It has a ton of information on kind of setting up an online classroom. So what I would like to do right now is I'd like to give you, let's say about 10 minutes to kind of play around with some of these links on your own, and then we'll come back at about a few minutes before time to end just to kind of debrief.
Hey, Charlotte.
Yep.
There have been several questions about them wanting to set up a Google Drive for the additional resources and such. So I know last year, at the end of the year, we set up a Google Classroom for everyone, and just any middle school teacher could get in and drop stuff. So I'm guessing we'll be setting up something similar.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we can either do, you guys can maybe chat it out whether you'd rather do a Drive or a Classroom. I know that you guys have 1,000 of each of those, and I don't know which one you think is more friendly for sharing documents and information. Somebody mentioned Nearpod. Yeah, Nearpod is a good place to get resources as well. Just know with Nearpod, you probably want to do the free one. You can't get as much, obviously, as when you pay for others, but there are things on there. So I'm going to mute and, like I said, give you guys some time to kind of look at some of these, and then I'll try to answer some of your questions in the chat. All right, so I know that probably wasn't enough time to look at all these resources, but we wanted to provide you with a variety of resources that you could look at. I've noticed
Charlotte?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but during the break, I went on into the FOSS and looked, and they have opened up all of their next gen books. And if you go to your My Teacher page, the code is on that page. So they've opened up all the ebooks for the next gen through December.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Michelle. That a lot of people will be interested in that. So somebody, actually Kristen asked the difference, or is there one Edpuzzle or Pear Deck? Which one is better? Anybody familiar with those and have an answer to that?
Sorry, did you say Edpuzzle? I missed something.
Yeah, somebody had a question about Edpuzzle and Pear Deck. Which one is better to use? I was just asking.
I could talk to Edpuzzle because I used it a ton last time. I don't know about Pear Deck. But for Edpuzzle, we have the paid version though. So there might be, you can put a limited amount of videos with a paid version. If you don't have the paid version, it's not as good because you can only have like a few videos, and you have to keep getting rid of the other ones, and then you have to go back and get them. But if you have the paid version, it's really awesome because you can upload the video of you doing your lesson, or you can upload any video that's anywhere on YouTube, and you can put in your own questions. But a lot of times people have already put them in there, and you can just tweak theirs or just use it as it is. But it just depends if you have the paid version or not. Our school has the paid version.
Right. And I will say that the district is looking at more apps, and somebody mentioned Clever on there earlier. If you haven't gone to Clever, you can get through it from the JCPS homepage, but you will see a lot of the apps that have been approved for JCPS use, and then Clever just makes it easy because you can then click on those apps directly and not have to worry about all the login stuff. All right.
I would say from my experience in Pear Deck, I would say that Pear Deck takes a lot of preparation ahead of time. It takes something that you already have, like a PowerPoint, and you incorporate into it student interactive activities that they're doing from their cell phones. And so it's good. It does allow them to get off task very easily. They can write all sorts of ridiculous things on a screen, and you can't really control it. I also just felt like it's a lot of labor to get it to do what you want it to do, but it's a good system if you do it and you have it and it's reusable. But I don't think it's the same thing as Edpuzzle. I think a lot of people in the chat have said the same thing. They're very different.
Gotcha. So we are out of time, and I realize if you need to leave, I get that, because it's, it's been an hour and a half of your time. But there are a couple of things. I do have another form that if there are some things that you need from us, because like I said, I know there are 10,000 more unanswered questions and there are answered questions. Some of the things that were brought up, if you want to share that information there, Michelle, Lacey, and I will investigate and try to figure out what we can, or if there's ways that you need help, we'll be happy to try to facilitate that. And then I'm going to bounce back here just a second. If you didn't already, because some folks came in a little bit later, please make sure that you click on this form and just fill out with your name and information so that I can make sure that we give you PD credit. If for some reason you don't end up with that PD credit and by the end of the week, you're more than welcome to email me as well, but this just makes it a little bit easier for me to be able to do that. So final thoughts before we end for today. So I'm just going to say one last thing. Start small, take care of self, and we will figure out how to do this.